Hey friend, you are listening to The Discerning Mother. This is for the woman of faith who wants to feel calm, grounded, and whole again without pretending that everything is fine. In these episodes, you will learn to understand your body, your nervous system, and the stories that you carry so you can become the woman that God had in mind. All right, let's dive in. Alrighty, welcome back to The Discerning Mother. Today I'm here with Bernie, and we already were talking a little bit, but I was like, I need to press record so that you all know who she is and where she is in the world right now too. Okay, so Bernie, thank you so much for being here. Would love to just learn a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, this is so fun. I love being here. So my name is Bernie, which you already said. My company is Snuggle and Sleep, which is a little nod to my Australian background because, keeping it short, we have a traditional Australian kids storybook called Snuggle Pot and Cuddle Pie. And the characters in that, they're always wrapped in gum leaves, which is again super Australian, and they're just like little naked babies with gum leaves, which is just so cute. So when I was starting my company, I was like, I really just wanted to bring like a little bit of my background in it without being like over the top. Like I'm not, going to put the word Australia in there. It's just something that's kind of personal for me. So that's kind of the name of my company. But I'm from Australia. I'm from Western Australia, and I met my husband. I was just telling Brigid when I was doing an au pair year for a Catholic family of now 9. They had 6 kids at the time, and they were having their 7th. So I came across to America as a 19-year-old, and then I met my husband at church, and it was during COVID. It was super crazy. So we ended up being long distance for like a year and a half. We got engaged virtually, and then we came back, got married. It was kind of still, that was like 2022. So that was kind of the end of the COVIDness. So thankfully our wedding was pretty smooth with preparations, but everybody getting flights to come, from Australia was crazy. We were like really blessed to have a lot of my family make it. And now we have 2 girls. I have Ivory, who will be 2 in October, and I have Thea, who was just born in March. So she just turned 5 months yesterday. So 2 under 2, which is super fun.
Yes, for sure. Very cool. Super exciting. Love other moms who are out there running businesses and also primarily being a mom as well. Like, so good. It really reminds me of, I always come back to like St. Sally Martin, where
Yes, I
obviously
love
it's
St.
somewhat of a
Sally.
different, yes, right? Somewhat of a different time period, but
Hmm.
still it's so cool how she was like still the head of the household in terms of like running it, but
Hmm.
also had this like beautiful lace business where she employed a bunch of other women, and it was just like so cool. So
Yeah,
cool.
I think so. Zelly, I mean, we have so much to learn from her, and not to go off on a tangent, but like she had nursing trouble, which I love relating to. I
Mhm.
had nursing trouble
Yep,
with my
for
first.
sure.
And so many women these days have nursing trouble. And I think sometimes we idolize back in the day. It's like back in the day, this wasn't an issue. But then you look at someone like St. Zelly, who, I mean, she was a mom of 5 kids. She also had stillborns, miscarriages. She lost
Yes.
children. So I think there's just a
Yep.
lot we can relate to. Her letters are so vulnerable when she talks about that stuff. She had to send Therese off to a wet
Yep.
nurse, and then she ran this lace making business, and her husband quit his job to help her, which
Yes.
I just think so many men
Never
these days would find that so
Yes.
weird.
I know. Well, even back then, can you imagine how like countercultural that was for them, like for her
Hmm.
husband to quit her job? But I know it's so good. Um, and I really think that some people forget too. Like she raised literal like a saint, like
Yeah,
well probably
a bunch of
multiple saints.
saints.
Yeah. And it's like
Yeah.
it's so cool just to be like, so she was still able to do all these things. She became a saint herself. Her husband's a saint, and like
Hmm.
she raised all these saints. So
Yeah.
it's just so cool. But okay,
Yeah.
so I want to touch on what led you to the world of like infant sleep and toddler sleep consulting, because so many of my clients struggle with this with their own
Yeah.
babies, and it's not my forte, so I always give them other
Hmm.
resources, but would just love to know like what got you into this, what you love about it, how you're helping women and babies.
Definitely. So I've just like always loved working with babies, even before I was a mom. So I've worked in a kids shoe store, and then I did the au pairing. I wanted to be a teacher, but then I met my husband. I was like, well, that's just a lot of school I just wanted to be a mom. So I was like, that's probably not going to work out to be a teacher. So I actually just started exploring avenues where I could still work with babies and moms, but I could also be a stay-at-home mom. So of course, there's all the different kinds of consultants and coaches out there, and there was just like such a world to choose from. But the thing that started to really resonate with me is like, well, I love lactation consultants. I think they're great. I mean, they're helping moms nurse. What's better than that? I love mom coaches, mom therapists, postpartum doulas, like there's all these really cool industries. But I realized at the root of it is if a mom is not sleeping and if her baby's not sleeping, she can't really deal with any of these other issues. I mean, she can deal with them, but she's still going to have something that's holding her up. And so I was like, I want to deal with just the first step. It's like sleep is really important for us as humans. We need to eat and we need to sleep. They're two very basic human functions. And having nannied for so many families, I started as an au pair and then I went back to Australia and I nannied and babysat for just a huge variety of families. And it doesn't matter whether they were Catholic or not Catholic, whether the mom was working from home, whether she was working out the home, whether she was a stay-at-home mom, a lot of them struggled with sleep and it impacted their daily functions, and that sounds a little bit cliche, but I think anybody listening to this who struggled with sleep deprivation, and I think every mother has struggled with it at some point, even myself, I just got back from a 6-week trip to Australia and we were all jet lagged and sleep deprived, and you put your babies first. So of course I dealt with their sleep before mine. So I just had, a fun week of sleep deprivation and jet lag. And so we've all dealt with it. It doesn't matter whether you're a sleep consultant or not. Like you've had sleep deprivation at some point, and it starts to just like inhibit your ability to think, your ability to mother, to be a good mother. Especially as a Catholic, when we want to be patient with our children. I think that's just like one of the number one things for me is to be patient, because I can be such a good mother if I'm just listening and taking a second. But when you're sleep deprived, that is really, really hard to be patient because you just want to snap. And then I think mental health starts to, play a really big role there, because if you're sleep deprived, and you're already dealing with mental health issues, maybe you're already dealing with postpartum anxiety or depression. And I've had my own share of postpartum anxiety. And I mean, scientifically, sleep deprivation does not assist that at all. So I just think there's so many issues that then stem from sleep deprivation. So for me, it was like, okay, I just want to deal with not the root cause of it, but more like the first step in dealing with the other causes.
Yeah.
And it's been so rewarding because every time I've helped a mom, like it amazes me. I talk to them on the phone before they're a client and I hear the tiredness in their voice. I hear how jaded they are. Some of the moms who come to me for help, obviously it's not working for them. So oftentimes their husbands are not even sleeping in the bed with them. So now we're seeing, marriage problems and other issues arising. They tell me I've literally changed their lives. And that is the most rewarding thing I can hear from people is they come to me and they're feeling so broken and they don't even know where to turn. And they've tried everything, like they've gone to the internet, they've asked their friends and nothing's working and they don't know why it's not working. And then they start to feel like they're a failure and it's impacting other things in their lives. And then, to work with me is only a 2 to 3 week program. It's not even long, but because it's consistent, because we're tackling the actual causes of sleep deprivation, we're not just, throwing a baby in their crib and letting them cry, which is just such a common misconception about sleep training. We're not just saying, hey, co-sleep, everything's going to be fine, which it's not for some people going to be fine. And after 2 to 3 weeks, which is really such a short period, 2 to 3 weeks is nothing. And you come out on the other side and suddenly you're sleeping 8 hours. And your baby's going to bed happy, which is huge for mothers because obviously they don't want to see their babies going to bed upset. And sometimes even when you think, you're doing all the right things, you're rocking your baby to sleep, you're nursing them to sleep, and they're still crying because they're tired. And you're like, well, I'm giving them everything. What more could they want? And then you switch to them falling asleep by themselves and they're happy going to sleep by themselves. And there's less tears, which just doesn't seem like it would happen to a lot of people. So coming out the other side of that and getting these testimonials from the moms that I've worked with about how I've changed their lives and they're actually like, I've saved their marriages and their children are happier and their households are functioning.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that I'm kind of like a raging lunatic whenever I don't get sleep. And so I personally, I'm not terrible, but I get pretty bad, not gonna lie. But I'm also somebody who has very high sleep needs. So I need those hours at night, but I also have 5 kids, 9 and under, 3 of which usually end up in the bed with us. And so I've learned how to adapt, but I would love for you to touch more on what is your philosophy around baby sleep? Because you mentioned co-sleep. I know I've seen you online mention cry it out. So I would love to just hear do you work from more of a gentle sleep approach, from an attachment based style? What's your style?
So my philosophy is to work with the baby, not against the baby. And then coming back to a Catholic base, it's like we need to not forget that babies are humans and they have souls, you know. So I think sometimes people get really caught up in like this is has to be a one size fits all solution, or you know, even like you get the really crunchy moms who are like everybody has to co-sleep, you know, and then you get maybe the really like, you know, the moms who are working or they're just like really not into attachment parenting and they're like every baby has to sleep in their crib. But I think they're really leaving out an important element of like, well, this is a little human, and what is this little human telling us? Because babies give us so many cues with what they're doing. So talking to moms, once I get an idea of the temperament of their baby, you know, if they're a really sensitive baby, we have to go slow. Like, I'm sorry, like even if the mom is telling me I've got to start work next week, I need an efficient method, but she's telling me as soon as I put my baby down, she cries, or we've co-slept for the past 2 years of our lives. And I'm like, well, this is all great what you need, but we also have to take into account the baby's needs. So it's just finding that balance between what's going to work for the mom. And then, you know, it's a situation like that, I might be like, okay, what's dad doing? What's grandma doing? Who else can help you with sleep training? Because we're not going to force your baby to do something that's not going to work for them. So for a really sensitive baby, we would definitely go with a very slow transition. There's methods you've probably heard of like gradual withdrawal, or habit stacking. These are methods that you do one little step at a time. And then you see how your baby's reacting to it. So, you know, the first night might be, okay, we're not nursing to sleep, we're rocking to sleep. Yes, there's probably going to be some tears, but at least you're holding your baby through it. So it's not this huge traumatic event. And then maybe 2 nights of that, then maybe you're moving to your baby is now in the crib, but you're laying your hands on them, you're talking to them, you're shushing them, you're there with them the whole time, but now you're giving them that new space to sleep in. That would be a super gentle transition. The only downside of a transition like that is it takes a lot longer. So you have to be very consistent and very patient. And then the other side of that is a baby who's really, really stubborn is not going to do well with a method like that because they're just going to get worked up and really, really, really worked up. And you have 5 kids, so I'm sure your kids all have different temperaments. And so again, working with the baby, sometimes there is less tears overall, and it's much more effective to put the baby in the crib and do something called space soothing, which is probably come up online. People call it controlled crying or FERBA, and that has a lot of misconceptions around it too, because people think, you know, oh, you're just leaving your baby to cry. That's so mean. But instead what you're doing is you're leaving them for increments of time to let them find ways to help themselves settle. And this is for a baby that's like pushing their mother away. Like say you're, you know, I don't know if you've had any babies like this, but you know, there'll be a mother who's like rocking their baby to sleep and their baby's literally pushing them away. And that baby is just telling their mom like, hey, I need some independence. I need to figure this out. So you've got to listen to your baby. And even though like every mother does not, we do not like hearing that our babies don't need us. We don't like it when our kids go to school. We don't like it when our babies stop nursing. Like we just don't like it when our babies do independent things. So sometimes it's a little bit of a tough message of like, your baby doesn't need you right now. They actually want to figure it out for themselves. But you just want to make sure you're always checking on your baby and you're not leaving them alone, which of course a baby monitor is really great when you're, you know, teaching your baby to sleep so you can see what's going on. But you're going to be, you know, for space soothing, you're going to be checking in at increments to like let them know, hey, I'm still here. I'm always going to come back. So, and that's going to be for a more stubborn baby, as I mentioned. So it's really working with the baby. The other thing is that side of sleep training, you know, that side of sleep consulting is really the end of the sleep consulting. We don't even touch that until we've touched everything else, because holistically, to teach your baby to sleep, you need to look at, you know, the word holistic, you know, it's of the whole body. And you can't really teach a baby to sleep if there's something else going on. So the things that we're going to look at are going to be like the environment, you know, maybe you're putting your baby to sleep in a really quiet room, which you might think is really great. But when you go back to the science of, hey, how was it when the baby was in the womb? It was actually really kind of loud. Like it's not quiet in the womb. If you've ever, you know, heard one of those videos of what it sounds like from inside, like there's just a lot of white noise because they can hear their mothers talking, they can hear people around them. So putting a baby to sleep in a quiet environment is what people like to do because it's like, shh, you know, the baby's sleeping. But white noise and other sounds can really help to simulate the environment that they had when they were in the womb. So setting up the environment to be helpful to sleep is going to be the first step. And then we're going to be looking at associations. So, you know, a baby, again, who's been co-sleeping, the mother is probably their association. A baby who is being bounced on a ball. This is a really common one. The mother or the father sits on a yoga ball and bounces their baby for 45 minutes or sometimes 2 hours. And that is not a unique situation. That is a situation that probably some of our listeners will relate to instantly, is the yoga ball. And I think it's because like the mother's been pregnant and she has that yoga ball there and she's sat down on it one night and her baby really liked it. And so that's just become their routine.
Yeah.
I had one family that the dad would sit in the bathtub and he had the fan of the bathroom on. And so the baby liked the noise and he would sit in the bathtub and put his baby to sleep every night. So these are all associations, right? Like they're all things that a baby associates with going to sleep. So then we make the transition to things that are actually going to be more long lasting. So things like using a sleep sack is actually an association because once you zip that sleep sack on, the baby knows, oh, it's bedtime. Things like nursing before bed, that's a really great association. A bedtime routine is a really great association. So the white noise is also a great association. So all of the things around the bedtime, all these cues, they're associations. So we want to really give our babies a lot of associations that we're able to stick with. I would say like bad associations are things that you might implement that you don't want to stick with. So maybe you sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to your baby until they fall asleep, but maybe you don't want to be singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for the next 3 years of your life for a full 15 minutes. Maybe you just want to sing it once. So instead of creating that habit of they have to fall asleep to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, it's more a habit of we sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, but your baby falls asleep with the white noise machine or a sound machine that's playing Twinkle Twinkles instead. So we really want to pick sustainable associations because that's going to go. So something else that we look at is nutrition. If a baby is fully breastfed, then, we're going to make sure the baby is getting enough feeds during the day. We're going to make sure they're getting full feeds. I mean, so you're breastfeeding yourself. So
Yes.
I'm sure with all of your knowledge and everything, you know about, you've got your fore milk and your hind milk. And we want to make sure the baby's getting the hind milk because that's like the really nutritious fatty stuff. And sometimes babies who are really bad sleepers, I don't really even like that term, bad sleepers. It's more just like babies who are not sleeping well. Often they will also do snack feeding because nothing's really going well. So they're taking these 2-minute feeds and they're just getting a little bit and then they're falling asleep for 10 minutes, but they're not able to stay asleep because they're not really actually full, but because they're so tired, they can't stay awake at the breast. So it's just kind of this vicious cycle and it just gets worse and worse. So then we just really work on getting fuller feeds in. So, empty one breast. And for a mom who doesn't know about that, maybe she needs to see a lactation consultant, but maybe it really is just a conversation about, hey, if you empty the full breast, your baby's getting all of your milk on one side, which is actually more beneficial than having a little bit from both sides. And it's not like we get, a parenting handbook when we have our babies. So these are a lot of things that parents just are not even aware of. They'll keep switching sides and their baby's getting all this, hydrating milk, but it's not really actually filling milk. And then for a baby who's on solids, which I really love baby-led weaning because that's just a lot more nutritious. I'm not against purees. I think if purees work for you, that's fine. But often purees are going to be things like applesauce. They're not super filling. Whereas if you can go straight into like beef liver, which sounds really hardcore, but liverwurst, honestly, a lot of babies love liverwurst.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think I think the fore and the hind milk is not talked about enough because I know whenever I had my third baby, he was having a lot of like gastro issues and very fussy and like I could not figure out what was going on. And then I finally stumbled upon fore and hind milk imbalance, and I was like, this is exactly what it is. And so if I would have just gone to like a traditional, like if I would have gone the traditional route, they probably would have said like allergic to dairy, like all these different things, this is why he's not sleeping, so on and so on. When in reality, it was that where it was like he was getting too much of the like watery milk, not enough of the fatty milk. And so then that led to a bunch of other issues as well. So I think that's so huge. I do want to ask, just because I'm curious, I've worked with actually a lot of women from Australia, and I know from a birth perspective, there's a lot of similarities, but then there's also a lot of differences giving birth in America versus Australia. What is it like in terms of sleep? So how do these cultural expectations around independence really influence the way that Americans think about sleep training versus Australians or even other countries as well?
So it's quite interesting. Australia, it's almost becoming a communist country, which is very sad. But because it is a very forward country, mothers who work get a lot of time off, which does actually support the mother in a lot of ways that the American society doesn't support working mothers. And because, in society, a lot of mothers are working mothers, I think that goes a long way into like just having time to deal with things. But then if we're going to look at, stay-at-home moms or working from home moms, I think the culture would be quite similar between Australia and America. I think because Australia has a much smaller population, there does tend to be more support. Um, it's just you're going to have more nurses, you're going to have more nurse midwives, you're going to have more sleep consultants per capita, you're going to have more lactation consultants, more therapists. There's just more of it. There's more support. And because Australia, it's that weird connection between like being forward thinking, and so there's like just a lot of like liberalism, but sometimes what comes with that is just like a lot of resources,
Yeah.
which is just like a really funny mix. But I think we have a lot more resources than America does. But I think it's also just because there's a lot more people here and it's just hard to reach everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. And so, okay, I'm going to ask this question because I just had actually literally two clients ask me this. Like, and the question is like, so I guess, what would you say to a mom who is so sleep deprived and desperate, but doesn't feel right about having their baby cry it out?
So, cried out is that phrase is a whole thing because that phrase has been coined as like throw your baby in the crib, lock the door, and don't check on them till morning. And that is horrible. Like nobody should do that ever, And I think our parent generation actually did that, which is kind of crazy, or our grandparents' generation, because I've had older people, when I tell them I'm a sleep consultant, be like, well, why don't you just leave the baby in the crib and let them cry? And it's like I can't even have a conversation. Like I don't even know where to start. So for a mother who's really sleep deprived, I think a lot of education is needed for what sleep consulting actually is. Like once you explain, well, you don't have to leave your baby to cry it out, and then they're like, oh, hey, what do you mean? I can get sleep without leaving my baby to cry it out? I've never heard of that before. And then it's like, yes, because we're working with your baby and we're going to holistically address all of your baby's needs. And then after, I've actually had clients that we've actually never gotten to the sleep training part because their baby has started sleeping through the night. Because we addressed what I talked about, the environment, we've addressed the associations, we've addressed the routine, which is huge because we all have a circadian rhythm, we all have a biological internal clock. And if you're working with that, if you're using sleep windows, if you're building enough sleep pressure and you're putting them to nap at the right time, then it can happen that you put your baby to sleep by themselves and they will happily fall asleep and you will never have to sleep train. Now that I wouldn't say that's the most common, but it definitely happens. And then, again, even if you had to use some sleep training, it's so much shorter than it sounds like it's going to be. And it's not about just letting them cry. You can be with them the whole time. I think it's also just like a very touchy point because a mother who maybe has a lot of anxiety or stress, the last thing she needs is to hear her baby cry because that sends like cortisol just through the roof. So I think it's really good to know that for them to know they can work on all these other things without hearing their baby cry. And then having a supportive husband is just the next biggest thing because a lot of husbands, they don't get stressed like we do. And if their baby's fussing, they have the ability to stand there for a second and say, is it a fuss or is it a cry? Yeah. And if it's just a fuss, they'll leave the baby. Whereas the mother who is already under a lot of stress and already under a lot of sleep deprivation may not even have a chance to think about it and go in and grab her baby when maybe her baby's just fussing and putting their fingers in their mouth and actually figuring out how to self-soothe. So I think for, to answer your question, like really just simply is for those mothers to know that they don't have to leave their babies to cry it out, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, so good. And it's so hard whenever you're in the thick of it, especially with a newborn. And if it's your first time and you've never done it, it's like, it really can be so difficult to believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But if that's you right now listening, there really is a light at the end of the tunnel, like literally and figuratively. You can do this.
No, absolutely.
So, and your baby will eventually sleep. And one of the things that I was always told, because my daughter was a terrible sleeper. She was our first. She was awful. And the only place she would sleep was either on me or right beside me. And so got so much flack from people around that. They were like, well, how is she X, Y, and Z? And it's like, she'll be fine. And she is. And that's one of the things that I want to really hit home is it's like, they're not going to be this bad of sleepers for the rest of their life. Like eventually they're going to actually sleep. And just to remember that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely. And I think also just touching on, because you said like newborns, and it's like newborns are another kettle of fish.
yes.
There's so many things you can do to help your newborn, and often people will say my baby was colicky, and true colic is 3 hours
Yes.
of crying a day, 3 days a week. It's a lot of crying. And babies
Yeah.
who are colicky but don't have colic often are actually just overtired. Um,
Mhm.
they just need to go to sleep more often. But with newborns, it's like, no, you cannot sleep train them. No, you cannot teach them habits. Newborns do not
Yeah.
remember things day to day. Everything
No.
is fresh for a newborn. And like they've just come out of the womb. Like this is a whole new world for them to navigate. So I think if you're a newborn mom listening to this, yes, there is hope, but it is a phase, and the whole survival mode thing is definitely true. You've got to get through it, and yes, there are things you can do.
Yeah,
And I
for
do
sure.
have even like a free newborn sleep guide I'll send to newborn moms that just like has some basic information. Here's some things you can do. Here's some things you can implement for healthy sleep habits. But one of my favorite things is like the bedside bassinets. And I've used that for both babies because it's just like, now, me personally, I cannot co-sleep. And I do it sometimes just because, like, say my baby's sick or something, but I have a terrible night's sleep when I try to co-sleep. Like, my arm is sore, like, I cannot get
Mhm.
comfortable. And I'm just like, I wake up in such a bad mood. But the co-sleepers, like, you're close enough that your baby is, and these are things that come up all the time. Like, they're regulated by your heartbeat, they are regulated by your breathing, but they're right next to you. And
Yeah.
then when you're ready to transition to like more independent sleeping, I mean, you can still keep the baby in your room. Like you can still teach your baby to sleep independently in the same room as you.
Yeah.
And room sharing is even recommended by even the medical world for up to a year.
Mhm.
So I think, as a Catholic mom who maybe wants to stay, a little bit more attached to your baby, you would definitely be following that. I mean, I'm not against if you want to move your baby to another room as long as you have a monitor and you can hear. I wouldn't put them on a different floor, but I mean, my toddler is in a different room and I can hear her straight through our walls because we're really thin walls. So you can probably hear my kids out there right now. Um, so I think like there's also just a lot of misconceptions about like your baby can't sleep in the same room with you, which is just it's not true. I mean, your baby can be in the same room as you and you can still teach them how to fall asleep. And it just means that you can put your baby to sleep maybe at 7 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. and then you can go have a glass of wine with your husband. Then you can go
Yeah.
decompress for the day. You don't have to go to bed with your baby. But when you come into the room and go to sleep and your baby maybe is still waking up for a feed overnight, they're right there. They're easy to nurse in the bed and then you put them back in their bed and you go back to bed and you both sleep.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so good. And so, what's like the biggest red flag that you see from a sleep advice online perspective?
I think it's all the sort of what I would call like one size fits all advice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because people like to generalize everything. And I think it maybe comes from a marketing perspective too, right? Like it's so easy to say, hey, do this one thing. Um, and it's like it's not like that, or like free sleep plans that you can download. It's like, there's no guarantee that that's going to work. So I think working with a sleep consultant like myself, like you work one-on-one. I have another sleep consultant that works with me. Her name's Angela, and she's amazing. And she works one-on-one with my clients too. And because she's there to hold your hand and answer your questions, and she's there to assess what your baby's doing throughout the sleep process, we're
Yeah.
able to make adjustments as needed because every baby is different. So even if we, we'll start off by giving people, as an age appropriate, sleep routine because
Yeah.
like we can ask only so many questions and parents are also that are sleep deprived don't remember. So I'll get some parents that say to me like, yeah, like my baby, like she goes to bed at 8 p.m. and she doesn't wake up till 2 a.m. And then like the first night they're like, well, she wake up at 10, she wake up at 12 and 1. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's a little different. Or they'll say like, hey, she's waking up every 2 hours and so sleep deprived. And then they'll be like, well, actually, she actually only woke up once last night. Just because it's like so much information. So we know what we're starting with is not always going to be accurate, which is why we stick with our clients for 2 to 3 weeks and we follow up daily.
Yeah.
And then we readjust. We'll be like, oh, your baby does not have enough sleep pressure. Let's give them another 30 minutes awake. Or, oh, your baby is screaming. That sounds like they're overtired. Let's bring back that awake window by 15 minutes. So I think
Yeah.
like red flag advice online is people who are trying to give you one size fits all advice.
Yeah.
Unless they're saying, you're going to work with the biological clock. But if they're trying to tell you like this is definitely going to work for you, then, you know, take it with a grain of salt.
Yep. And then, so I hear this all the time, and I would love your perspective. The like sleep regressions and like the leaps, like the app, like the Leap app or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on like the sleep regressions? Is it just moms trying to like make sense of what's happening, or is it like kind of an excuse, or like what's your feeling on that? Because I personally have like I have zero, I mean, I have a clue, but I don't buy into like, I know regressions happen, but I don't let that like shift what we do necessarily. And maybe
Yes.
that's just
Yeah.
me, but it's like,
No, that's definitely the right thing.
like he's teething, like I'm going to do what I need to
Hmm.
do, but like I'm going to bed at this time and he can like lay there quietly, like beside me, like
Hmm.
whatever. So I'd love your perspective on
Yeah,
like
yeah.
regressions, leaps, all that, teething, everything like that.
Yeah, all the hiccups basically that come with sleep.
Yes, for sure.
I think the thing to remember is like sleep is not linear. Like sleep is always going to change. I mean, like we even talked about, like you have newborns and they're kind of like they still want to be in your womb, so you've got to wrap them up and swaddle them and do the things that they're comfortable with and give them the white noise and stuff. And then, the circadian rhythm starts to develop a lot around 3 to 4 months, and that's also when babies start to remember things. So you can start creating habits because they'll start to remember stuff day to day. But
Yeah.
then their sleep cycles will also change around 6 months and 9 months and 12 months and 18 months. And then as toddlers, their sleep cycles are actually very similar to adult sleep cycles, except because they're such tiny little humans, they also need to have naps. But then
Yeah.
thankfully after that, once they hit like preschool and stuff, yes, they might need more sleep than an adult, but their sleep cycles are working on the same kind of lengths as an adult. Um, so when it comes to like regressions are usually because your baby is actually going through a milestone. So maybe it's separation anxiety, which doesn't sound like a milestone, but it really is because it means they're actually realizing more about like you leaving the room and wanting their mother there, which is something they didn't realize before. So
Yeah.
maybe they're going to wake up more like wanting you overnight. Maybe they're just going to be practicing crawling or standing. Often when baby has a milestone, I mean, they just want to practice it, right? So they want
Yeah.
to do that all the time, all day. So they will literally wake up at night to practice that milestone. So the best thing you can do with a regression is to just write it out, and it usually will end within a week.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do for a regression is start changing everything. So
Yeah.
sometimes what happens is like the baby has a regression and say they're standing, and then the parent keeps going in and lying them down in their crib. And they're trying to force them to go back to sleep because they're like, well, they've always slept through the night. I don't understand why they're waking up and standing now. But if you just let them stand up, they'll go back to sleep. And within a week, they'll probably start sleeping through the night again because standing's boring, and they're going to move on to practicing the next milestone. So I think the worst sleep regression really is the 4 month sleep regression for a lot of people. And I think it's a little bit of an ironic word because babies who often have really bad sleep regressions are babies that actually haven't slept well before that. So
Yeah.
you've maybe got a newborn who's not sleeping great, and then they hit what people call the 4 month sleep regression because their sleep cycles are changing. The circadian rhythm is finally being developed. And that's all to do with the brain. So it's all these signals that the brain is sending out to the body. So many things are changing. And there's just so many other developments going on too. Breast milk is changing,
Yeah.
awareness, eyesight, feeling, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, all of these things are changing. So
Wow.
there's just a lot going on for this little tiny human. And their sleep just goes haywire. So people who are already having bad sleep have even more sleep. But if your baby is sleeping well before a sleep regression, sometimes you won't even notice the sleep regression because it will just be a couple of days or something a little different, and then you just keep doing what you're doing and you write it up.
Yep.
Um, and that's a little different to teething. So babies who are teething, it's better for them to get more sleep because they feel less pain when they're sleeping. So I don't recommend doing like actual sleep training when your baby is teething or something because you're trying to teach them a skill while they're in pain, which is just really not a good combination. Um, but if your baby is teething, I would definitely recommend, letting them nap longer, letting them sleep longer, giving them as much sleep as they can get because the more sleep they have, the less pain they're going to feel. And generally they get, those sometimes not every my baby doesn't get this actually, but or neither of them have, but a lot of babies get those like sort of fevers and droolingness and redness and stuff, and it almost looks like a sickness when they're teething. So I think just instinctively we know as mothers they just want to be held a little bit closer. They just want to get a little bit more sleep and comfort. And that's super normal. And the same goes for illness. Don't do anything crazy when your baby's sick. But they just need to be held. They just want to be attached to you, and that's totally fine. And these things are going to pass. Like, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. If your baby's sick 24/7 for 6 months straight, we're probably going to be having another conversation. But if your baby's going through sickness or teething, just don't worry about the sleep. Like, it'll come.
Okay. And so, for just like very practical, for the mom who has another baby coming along and their toddler is still struggling with a sleep routine,
Hmm.
like what would you tell a mom who's freaking out because their baby won't sleep and doesn't necessarily want to apply like the Ferber method or
Hmm.
try it out ish type things, like really wants to do more of the attachment style, what would you tell her?
If you're pregnant and you have a baby who's struggling, I would deal with the sleep as soon as possible because, I mean, you have 5 kids, so you know. But when the new baby comes along, the toddler is going to start to blame all of the changes on the new baby. So waiting till the baby comes and then making changes is really not ideal. If you're going to continue co-sleeping or something, or you're going to continue sleeping on the bedroom floor with a toddler while you have a newborn, then just do that and don't make any changes until the newborn is a few months old. But if you want to make changes, I would get started on those ASAP. And if you want to start really gentle, things that you can do are say we're going to go from the basics, like we have a co-sleeping toddler who's waking up kicking their mom all night. You can change the environment. So take the toddler and maybe put a floor mattress in their room instead. So you can start sleeping in their bedroom with them. I mean, you're already sleeping with them, so it's not really a big deal, but now you're getting used to them sleeping in a different room. And before making that the newest association that's going to be super hard to switch, just do that for a few days and get them comfortable in there. Then you can try putting them in the crib and you can lie on the floor mattress with them in the crib. And they're going to be a little bit upset, but you know, they're going to like ask for you and stuff, and you're just going to explain to them, and you're just going to lie there, or maybe your husband's going to lie there if they also like sleeping with him, and you're just going to make that tiny little transition, and you can hold their hand, you can lie next to them all night, but you're just in the bedroom with them. And then you can slowly just move away from that. So I would say if you're someone who just can't deal with, you know, any crying right now, you're not ready to make any big changes, I would just start with little changes, you know, maybe start with a floor bed, maybe move to their room, get your husband on board. I mean, they're also a parent, right? Like this is 50% their responsibility, especially if it's overnight, because I think all too often mothers just take it on themselves to deal with everything overnight because they're like, my husband has to go to work the next day. And even though, yes, like I'm the one that wakes up and feeds the baby overnight because I'm nursing and my husband can't do that. If my toddler wakes up, like my husband will definitely go in and see what's wrong, and maybe she needs a bottle of milk, maybe she has a dirty diaper, you know, maybe she lost her blanket, whatever it is, like he'll deal with that because like he can just go back to bed. Like I also have, you know, work to do the next day, so to speak. I have children to take care of. So I think it's really important, you know, with mothers who are struggling to sleep, to know like it's okay to ask your husband for help. Like it's okay for your husband to do the co-sleeping. If you need to go sleep on the couch, like it's okay for your husband to be awake that night. Yes, I'm sure like, you know, some husbands are out there working, you know, 10, 12-hour days of hard labor and stuff. And, you know, we've got to be considerate of them being the breadwinners if that's their position. But at the same time, like if you're pregnant, that is a full-time job in itself. And if you're taking care of a toddler or other children, you know, maybe you have 8 other children in the house. Maybe you have twins. Like there's mothers in all situations out there. Like give yourself some grace. You're doing a really hard job that you never get to turn off from.
Yes, for sure. I think that that's a big thing that a lot of us forget is like we are also, even though there are children, obviously, we are still doing like so much. And even though we're not necessarily collecting a paycheck for it, like it still is, I don't want to say a job because that's not
what it's really draining.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of, again, it's not work, but it's a lot of energy to expect, make sure that everybody stays healthy and is fed and like is good to go for the day, right? Okay.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think like it's not, you're right, it's not healthy to look at it as a job, because like it really is a vocation, and I think we are so blessed to be able to do what we're doing. But sometimes I think it helps for the husbands to hear how much their wife is working, because I think that word resonates a lot with men. When you say vocation, it sounds like a vacation, you know. So yeah.
I know. I'm very blessed because my husband literally says it all the time. He's like, you have the hardest job in the world. I don't know how you do it. But I can't imagine if he wasn't like that, like how hard things would feel, because he's always like, I don't want to do like what you do because it's too hard. Like he's like, I get to go to a job, sit in an office by myself, and then just come. And it sounds bad from like a not spending time with your kids standpoint. But
yeah,
the point is that it literally is like the hardest thing in the world, because you're not just managing your own nervous system, you're also managing all these little humans as well, because they're really feeding off of your nervous system. And that's one huge thing with sleep, is that it's like if you're frazzled and stressed, and like if you feel off, like as the mother, like your baby, especially young babies, are really going to pick up on that because they still co-regulate with you, and that's huge. So that's the other really big thing too to keep in mind.
Definitely. And I think it's also important just to take a moment here to say, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you really enjoy co-sleeping, like, this is not this is not coming from a place of judgment. Like, if
Yeah.
you want to I mean, you just mentioned you're co-sleeping with 3 babies, so I guess, your listeners probably already know that. But like, nothing I ever say to anyone, and like, I've had clients come to me, or like, not even clients, like, just women come to me and be like, so my mother-in-law is telling me my baby should be in their crib. So I guess I should reach out. And I'm like, well, what do you think? And they're like, I actually kind of like sleeping with my baby. And I'm like, well, then I'm not going to help you because you don't need helping. Or a mother sometimes, oh my goodness, I've had mothers come to me and say, like, I've been reading online, my baby should sleep 12 hours a night, but he actually only sleeps 10. So can you help me? And I'm like, 10 hours is fine. Like, your baby is doing totally fine. Like, unless your baby is waking up crying overtired, like, 10 hours of sleep is obviously what he needs. So stop listening to other people, I think is really important as a mother. Like, again, taking it back to that faith-based perspective of God gave us these little humans to take care of, and he also gave us the instincts to take care of them. So if your gut is telling you one thing, but the internet or someone in your life is telling you something else, follow your gut, because God gave that to you.
Definitely, for sure. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have 2 more questions. One of them is here. So can you share 1 or 2 really simple, practical, like, steps or shifts that a mom could try tonight to make sleeping more peaceful for everybody involved?
Yes. A really simple one is take your own stress levels down, because babies, you just mentioned it, they regulate from us. So if you're having a difficult time getting your babies to sleep, think about how you're feeling. If you're feeling stressed going into the bedtime routine, your baby immediately is going to be stressed, like, no chance. And then you're trying to regulate a baby when you're not regulated yourself. So look at yourself first, take a deep breath and see how you're feeling. And then maybe tonight's not the night. Actually, maybe this is the night you call your husband or the grandma or someone else. If you're not in a place to put your babies to bed calmly, then tonight is not your night. But if you can regulate yourself and take a deep breath and go put your babies to sleep, it's going to be so much easier on everyone involved, if the mother is regulated to start. So I think that's just a really very simple, place to start. And then, another tip would be, don't try to do everything at once. I think sometimes it all gets overwhelming. It's like mothers will be like, and I'm doing this wrong, and I'm doing this wrong, and I'm doing this, but just like pick one thing. What is it that you want to achieve in the maybe, are you looking at your baby saying, I really want you to put yourself to sleep, but right now you're nursing them to sleep? Or then maybe try a pacifier, or maybe try rocking them to sleep. Just try something. If you're feeling up for it and you want to make a step forward, choose a small step towards independence. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, and see how it goes. I think also, though, sometimes it can feel like everybody's just trying a lot of things all the time. So it's okay to just stop and just keep doing what you're doing and ask yourself, like, do I want to do this? And if you say, yes, I do want to do this, then, no need to make those changes. Just keep doing what you're doing. Take a deep breath and regulate yourself, and then just move forward.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So good. Okay. And so last question is, what do you want the discerning mother to know?
So I think coming into your podcast, I've seen a lot of like how you help women, heal from trauma and everything. So I think the discerning mother is really someone who's trying to find herself again. And she's really trying to like cut out all the noise from the world. So I think, again, it comes back to listen to your gut. God gave that to you. So if you're trying to discern, what is it that God wants of me, even in relation to sleep, just pray about it and the answer will be there. So sometimes, for you, the answer is going to be, I need my baby to sleep separately to me. And sometimes the answer is going to be, I need my baby to sleep right next to me. And it's going to look different for every single woman. So if you're truly discerning what God wants for you, just pray about it. Pray to your patron saint. I love praying to my babies, other people's babies, guardian angels. Your guardian angel is your special God-given angel. And I think also just that whole thing of like angels are there to help you sleep, maybe that's a little bit cliche, but they really do. So pray to your baby's guardian angel, pray to your angel to talk to your baby's guardian angel and discern what it is that God wants for you and for that little human.
Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, it's so simple, but it's so hard sometimes to remember, like, oh yeah, God actually knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not 100%. My job to figure it all out, but I just have to ask him for that support. So hard, but so good. Well, thank you so much, Bernie, for being on here. And how can people reach out to you, find you, connect with you?
Yes, so I have a website. So if you put in Snuggle and Sleep, that'll come up. It's Snuggle and Sleep. I know that can get a little confusing sometimes. I also have Facebook and Instagram, so you can direct message me. And something I'll mention is for anybody listening to this, I have a free masterclass this Friday, and we're talking about the circadian rhythm and how to utilize that for better sleep naturally. So if you're someone who really, really wants to come at it from a natural angle, circadian rhythm is a great place to start. It's the biological clock. It's what you're born with. And there's a lot that we can do with the circadian rhythm to help our babies sleep better. So maybe we'll pop that in the show notes or something, because there will also be, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but there'll also be a replay available. So people can tune into that. And so Instagram, Facebook, my website, and my email address is snuggleconsulting@gmail.com. And I'm always happy for people to reach out to me and just ask me questions. So if you have a question, but you don't want to book a call and you're not ready to dive into, having a sleep package, just yet, just ask me some questions and we'll just get moving from there.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And we'll definitely need that link to share with some of the clients that I have, again, who are struggling with sleep, because
definitely.
Yeah, definitely send that on over. I'll link everything in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here, Bernie. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, it was so fun meeting you. Take care.
You too.